Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of GETSU the Warlock. GETSU has been supporting this channel for over a year now as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without amazing patrons like GETSU. And for the personalized deck tech, GETSU chose Ishkanah Grafwidow with a focus on Spider Tribal and Anthems to make the spiders deadly. But let's tackle Ishkanah first. Ishkanah is a 3/5 spider with reach that costs 4 and a green. It has, when it enters the battlefield, if there are 4 more card types among cards in our graveyard, we put 3/1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach onto the battlefield. And then by paying 6 and a black, target opponent loses 1 life for each spider we control. So Ishkanah can both make us spiders, and it can also drain our opponents too. Since we're running Spider Tribal, we're going to have plenty of spiders out there for Ishkanah to drain our opponents with. And again, the focus of this deck is to make our spiders even deadlier with Anthems. So Ishkanah can be deadly, and our spider army can be deadly too. So our strategy for this deck is very straightforward. We're going to fill the board with our 8-legged friends. This deck is packed with spiders, and we're going to try to get a ton of them into play. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, we're going to cast Anthems to make our spiders deadly. These Anthems can pump them, and some can help out in other ways too. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tact number 1, spinning webs. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap to sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. Next up, there's Farseek, which gets us a swamp into play tapped, and Rampant Growth can get us any basic into play tapped. And Sakura Tribelder can do the same if we sacrifice it. Next up, there's Search for Tomorrow, which we can suspend 2 for a green, and it lets us search our library for a basic land and put into play untapped. And then Herald lets us get 2 basics into play untapped by sacrificing a land. Cultivate's going to get us 1 basic into play tapped and 1 into our hand. And then Grow from the Ashes gets us 1 basic into play untapped or 2 if we kicked it. Next up, there's Circuitous Route and Explosive Vegetation, both of which can get us 2 basics into play tapped, and Circuitous Route can actually get us one of those as a gate instead. And finally, there's Wilderness Reclamation, which says at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. This can be huge for this deck, allowing us to cast our spiders or other spells, and then untap our lands to activate Ishkanah on an opponent's turn. But what are some of those spiders that we're going to be playing in this deck? Let's go over some now in tactic number 2, standard spiders. I'm going to mention this now so I don't say it every single time, but every single spider in this deck has reach. So creatures with flying are going to have a very difficult time getting through. And in general, spiders usually have a pretty high toughness, allowing them to be pretty fantastic blockers. Anyways, first up there's Sporecap Spider, which is a simple 1/5. Next up there's Snare Spinner and Netcaster Spider, both of which get +2/+0 when they block a creature with flying. And then there's Jungle Weaver, which you can actually cycle for 2 if we need to. And then we've got 2 spiders with Vigilance with Sentinel Spider and Sky Snare Spider. Next up there's Watcher in the Web, which can block an additional 7 creatures each combat. And then Juvenile Gloom Widow has Wither, so it's going to deal damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. And then Blight Widow takes us a step further because it's got Infect. But finally, some of our best deterrents and blockers come with Deadly Recluse and Kessig Recluse. Both have Death Touch, so obviously they are extremely deadly. But we're nowhere near done with our spiders just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 3, special spiders. First up there's Acid Web Spider, which when it comes into play we can destroy target equipment. And then Stinger Flanger Spider destroys target creature with flying when it comes into play. Oran Reef Recluse can do the exact same thing if we kicked it for 2 and a green. Next up there's Chain Web Arachneer, which when it comes into play it deals damage equal to its power to target creature with flying and opponent controls. On top of that, it's got Escape for 3 green by exiling 4 other cards from our graveyard, and it comes back into play with 3/++1 counters on it. And then there's Silklash Spider, which has pay X green, it deals X damage to each creature with flying. This can make it very hard for our opponents to keep any flyers on the board. And then there's Obelisk Spider, which when it deals damage to a creature, we put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. And then whenever we put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. And then there's Nyx Weaver, which has at the beginning of your upkeep put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So this mills us, which can help us out with our commander and other things too. It also has pay 1 black green, exile Nyx Weaver, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Next up is Grave Robber Spider, which has pay 3 and a black. It gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Activates ability only once each turn. Another card that benefits from our graveyard is Hatchery Spider. It has Undergrowth. When you cast this spell, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. You may put a green permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this generally can get us a spider off the top for free. And finally, there's Arachnus Spinner, which has tap an untapped spider you control, search your graveyard and or library for a card named Arachnus Web, and put it onto the battlefield, attach target creature. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. Arachnus Web says enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. At the beginning of the end step, if enchanted creature's power is 4 or greater, destroy Arachnus Web. This can be a great way to lock down one of our opponent's small creatures. Now you might think that we are, but we're still not quite done with our spiders just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 4, Spider Eggs. First up, there's Twin Silk Spider, which when it comes into play, we get a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. And then Penumbra Spider has, when it dies, create a 2/4 black spider creature token with reach. One way to get a ton of spiders at once, though, comes with spider spawning. It says create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach for each creature card in your graveyard. On top of that, it's got flashback, so we can do that again for 6 and a black. And then there's Arasta, the Endless Web, which has, whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. Depending on our opponent's decks, this can make us a ton of spiders throughout the game. And finally, there's Grafwidow Pack, which has pay 3 green black, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach, then each opponent loses 1 life for each spider you control. So depending on the situation, this can be even more effective than our commander because it drains each of our opponents. Now we've kind of gone through all of our spiders, but we also kind of technically haven't. Now let's find out why I say that in tactic number 5, spiders. Now I'm saying that because we're also running 2 changelings with Webweaver Changeling and Graveshifter. Changelings are technically every creature type, which yes, includes spiders. And in the art, Webweaver Changeling actually even looks like a spider. It has, when it enters the battlefield, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you gain 5 life. And then Graveshifter has, when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And actually, Graveshifter doesn't have reach, and it's a spider, so technically earlier my statement about all spiders in this deck having reach wasn't technically true, but it's a changeling, give me a break. Anyways, now we've gone through every single spider, so what's next? Let's move on to tactic number 6, Web Weaving. First up, there's Sign in Blood, which says target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And then Read the Bones is going to have us scry 2, then draw 2, and then lose 2. Siphon Mine is going to make each of our opponents discard a card, and we draw a card for each card discarded this way. So most of the time for 4 mana, this is going to draw us 3 cards. Speaking of 4 mana and drawing 3 cards, we're also running Harmonize, Ambition's Cost, and Ancient Craving. Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving have a slight downside by making us lose 3 life. Next up, there's Promise of Power, which lets us draw 5 cards in exchange for losing 5 life. And then Collective Unconscious and Shamanic Revelation are going to draw us a card for each creature we control. On top of that, Shamanic Revelation is going to gain us 4 life for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. And finally, there's Moldavine Reclamation, which says whenever a creature you control dies, you gain 1 life and draw a card. This can be a fantastic way for us to help replace our dying creatures and stabilize our life total. Now, we've talked about our own strategy and our own plans, but how do we throw a wrench into our opponent's plans? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 7, Caught Up. First up, there's Return to Nature, which says choose 1, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. And then Deglamour says choose target artifact or enchantment, its owner shovels it into their library. This is a great way to get around indestructibility if needed. And finally, there's Beast Within, which says destroy target permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Destroying pretty much anything is going to be well worth that 3/3. But how do we actually protect our own things? Let's talk about that in tactic number 8, Swarm Safety. So we're going to be running some ways to protect our spider army with Wrap and Vigor and Golgari Charm. Wrap and Vigor says regenerate each creature you control. And Golgari Charm can do the same, or we can make all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target enchantment. This is a very flexible card that can really help us out in a lot of situations. Regeneration won't always save all of our spiders, but most of the time it's going to be enough. But outside of saving our spiders, how do we make them more deadly? Let's go through some ways in tactic number 9, Poisonous. First up, there's Archetype of Finality, which says creatures you control have Death Touch, and creatures your opponents control lose Death Touch and can't have or gain Death Touch. So first off, this makes it very hard for our opponents to justify swinging at us at all. All of our spiders having Death Touch is a huge deterrent for attacks. And it can help us with attacks too if we pump our spiders with something like Return of the Wild Speaker. It says choose 1, draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. So this can pump our army out of nowhere or draw some cards. But a way to make them even deadlier comes with Overwhelming Stampede. It says until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So this can be especially deadly with Death Touch, but it can also be even more effective with our anthems. Speaking of anthems, let's move on to tactic number 10, Deadly by Design. First up, this heraldic banner, which when it comes into play, we're going to choose green, and then our green creatures get +1/+0, and it can tap to add green. A Mana Rock Anthem is going to work great for this deck. And then Gaia's Anthem is just a simple anthem that gives all of our creatures +1/+1. An Icon of Ancestry is going to give our spiders +1/+1, and we can pay 3 and tap it to look at the top 3 cards of our library. We can reveal a spider from among them and put it into our hand and put the rest in the bottom of our library in a random order. So this pumps our creatures and can generate us card advantage too. Next up, there's Dragon Throne of Tarkir, which is basically a repeatable Overwhelming Stampede. It has equip creature as defender and pay 2 and tap it. Other creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the creature's power. And then there's Beastmaster Ascension, which says whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. This is a fantastic anthem that can turn even our small spiders into huge threats. But in my opinion, the Golden Pig of this deck is even better. The Golden Pig is going to be our #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Assault Formation. Assault Formation is an enchantment that costs 1 and a green. It says each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. By paying a green, target creature with Defender can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender, and by paying 2 and a green, creatures you control get +0/+1 until end of turn. The vast majority of our spiders have a high toughness and a lower power. So essentially for 2 mana, this gives them a ton of extra power. On top of that, this is a fantastic mana sink to pump our creatures. This can turn our entire army of spiders into deadly killing machines, and that's why it's the Golden Pig. Again, a huge thanks to GETSU the Warlock. I had a ton of fun building this deck. If you want to support this channel or want your own deck dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, there's Command Tower, which can tap for either of our colors, and Exotic Orchard can do the same most of the time. And then Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, we can both tap and sacrifice to get a base land into play tapped. Next up, we've got 3 lands that come into play tapped and tap for either of our colors. And then we've got our Balance Lane with Golgari Rot Farm, and some utility lands with Castle Garenbrig and Ormreef the Vastwood. And finally, we're running 25 basic lands, 18 of those are going to be a forest, and 7 will be a swamp. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Ishkanah EDH rec deck will set you back $176.10. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.42. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add a Metallic Mimic by taking out Sentinel Spider. Next up, let's add an Adaptive Automaton by taking out Acid Web Spider. And then let's add in Kindred Summons by taking out Collective Unconscious. Next up, let's add in Zendikar Resurgent by taking out Promise of Power. And then let's add in Vanquisher's Banner by taking out Gaia's Anthem. Finally, let's add in Obelisk of Erd by taking out Return of the Wild Speaker. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the Commander in general. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.